Back in Huskers Illustrated Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, live in Chicago for Big Ten Media Days. What a whirlwind. And time to talk to one of my favorite analysts with the Big Ten Network, also NFL Network, Charles Davis. Has spent so many times with Huskers Illustrated Radio. I get to see Charles in person, and he gets to see me, and, well, he's probably impressed. I'm kidding, Charles. Good to see you again. How are you, man?
Most impressed.
Right.
Not just impressed. Most impressed. It's good to meet you in person finally. We've been talking back and forth for
years.
Yeah.
For years.
Has that been that long?
It's been since 05 or 06.
Well, I'm glad you remember it because for me, it goes fast.
You're in demand, too,
as
man.
they say, as many people from the 60s would say, a few gaps.
Charles, I tell you, man, it's been a pretty great day, just with Nebraska's reception. The accessibility by the Big Ten's amazing with their players and their coaches and their analysts. I mean, it's been great. But I want to start off talking quarterback, and I don't think you can make too great of an argument that there's a better quarterback league than the Big Ten. I want to ask you how Taylor Martinez in year 2 can fit in to the Big Ten, make his presence felt.
Yeah, it's the same way he did with the Big 12. I don't think there's much change, transition. In terms of quarterback leagues, Pac-12, they'll want to argue with you with what they've got coming back. I think they can if you take them in total and you look across the thing and you look at Luck at Stanford, you look at Foles at Arizona, look at Osweiler at Arizona State.
Okay.
If I keep going down the line, I'm trying to think of who else I should be hitting. You hit Barkley at USC.
Very solid.
So they're pretty solid. I mean, they got some guys who can fling it around there a little bit. But I understand your point. It's an excellent point about the Big Ten with the people they have coming back and style of play. And Taylor Martinez is a kid that intrigues the heck out of me.
Okay.
Really enjoyed watching him last year. I know things didn't end the way that anyone wanted them to end. But I think that as he continues to mature and will make that team his team by how he plays, how he conducts himself, how he leads, I think that he's a good football player. I think he's the type of guy that fits fine here into the Big Ten. And, Chris, as you've seen, things aren't the way they used to be in terms of, the Big Ten's going to run the ball and beat you up and hit you upside the head, and the Pac-10 is going to throw the ball around. There's a blurring of that line across the way, big time. And I think that Taylor Martinez is the kind of kid who can blur the line quite well and do fine in the Big Ten.
Just talking with his former teammates or current teammates and guys that have been around the program for a number of years, they're seniors, they're excited as all get out about the work and the improvement he's made this offseason. When you look at Nebraska and their schedule, it's just daunting what the Big Red has in front of them. Is there too much respect being given by the Post-Dispatch and some of the other beat writers out there who know their football? I trust them. That Nebraska is the favorite? I mean, is it too much to ask them to come in year 1, win the title?
Not at all. Not at all. They have the team that's built for it. Ever since Bo Pelini took over, they got back to being Nebraska again.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. I know that you hear a lot of other people saying, hold up a second. Who have they beaten since, 2000, 2001? And it's a legitimate question when you ask it. But they're not, how would I put it properly? They now are ready to compete with those teams again the way they did before.
Mm-hmm.
They're ready to win those games again. To me, there was no reason that team should have lost to Washington last year.
They weren't interested.
They didn't want to play. And that's why I keep trying to tell people about bowl games. People bowl game. Look at the rate. Like, you hear a lot about the Big Ten versus the SEC, and then you point to bowl game records and all. Every bowl game is its own bowl game, is its own entity.
Yeah.
It's not. You take them in total. You can do that because it's one way to measure, but it's really not a true measurement. Sometimes teams don't want to be there. Sometimes you have a lot of kids now who are eligible for the NFL draft. It's not a national championship game. They may not want to play the same way.
And we get hurt.
You got a lot of reasons, a lot of factors. A coach may have left to go take another job. Now you got an interim coach. That could be either a plus or a minus. We can go on all day. All I'm saying is, very simply, this Nebraska team comes in ready to be a contender. And I say this all across the board. A contender in the Big Ten is a contender in the SEC, is a contender in the Pac-10, is a contender. Pac-12 is a contender in the ACC. The best teams play across the board. Don't worry about style. Don't worry about anything else. They don't always win in every conference, but they're ready to contend in every conference. That's just how it is. And people who don't believe that, Well, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not going to be very convincing in my argument.
Charles Davis, NFL Network and Big Ten Network analyst, talking college football. Huskers Illustrated Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, live in Chicago. Talk college football and cheating here. I know you have a tight time schedule, so we won't go where we could with college football and cheating. But Oregon, some issues in front of them. USC's paying for their issues. Ohio State looks like it won't get the hammer. And talking with Coach Fickle today, I think he's a good dude. I think he's going to do things the right way. So I hope Ohio State's at full strength or somewhere near that. But Butch Davis, a guy that was just the savior of college football in South Florida, less than a little over 10 years ago. And now he's out at North Carolina. His athletic director stepped down today. Your take, what do you think they found?
Well, I'm not sure they found any more than what we already know, Chris.
They just made a decision.
I think they made a decision,
okay.
And I think what happens is a place like North Carolina hasn't had NCAA trouble in major sports since Frank McGuire was the basketball coach there in the early 60s.
Yeah.
It's the last time they went through anything like that. So they pride themselves on that. They also pride themselves on academics. Remember, North Carolina, that's a pretty big-time academic school. When you talk about it, if someone comes home and says your kid got into North Carolina, that's cause for celebration. That's a big deal. Whether you're in state or out of state, that's a big-time school. That's what they were feeling now, that they were being ridiculed, that they were feeling like we aren't the same North Carolina. We're just like they are, because they also pride themselves on being a little bit above the fray. And the surprise to me, though, is that there's no new information in a long time.
Yeah.
Why now as opposed to a lot earlier where you could have done a little bit different with your program? Now they got to name an interim coach. There's some indecision there. You don't have an athletic director who's stepping down. I'm trying to figure out what happened that made him do it now. He was just at media days for the ACC 3 days ago.
Well, they picked the right time to do it rather than whack him a week and a half ago and then have whoever's the interim guy come in and take the heat.
Yeah, I'm talking months ago.
Well, right, right.
I mean, what's happened then?
They're too late in doing it.
Yeah, what happened then?
From an immediate media issue.
Yeah, I understand that. Your point's well taken on that. I'm just, okay.
You're going to do it.
What happened, when it all went down? We're kind of through the worst of it.
Yeah.
The
Butch
players
was still
didn't
able
play.
to go sign kids in February, though, and that's one thing that wherever he's been, they've been amazing.
They always get recruits, and everything works out that way. So I just hate it. I'm a friend of Butch's, so
sure.
I hate it for him. I get where they're coming from because I was surprised, frankly, he made it through last year. I thought it was going to happen right then and there, and it didn't. And the interesting part to me is them releasing the statement saying, he didn't, Butch Davis had no knowledge. We were aware he didn't know, or we're aware he didn't have a thing. I was surprised they didn't say, but he should have, and that's why we're letting him go today.
And
that's the thing.
That just comes down to control too.
And
you're
not going. And you're not going to know everything.
You can't.
You can't know everything. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not possible. But when you have a guy close to you like John Blake, you better know. That's what it comes down to.
John is
well known, terrific recruiter.
So many circles.
We know that.
Religious guy, great recruiter, father figure.
But Chris, when he was in Nebraska, no, it wasn't like anyone didn't know that maybe.
You were
John
nervous.
Blake might.
Always nervous.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we're saying.
Always nervous.
All I'm saying is you're just wondering because you get reputations out there and you hate that because nothing was proven that way. And John Blake was a great recruiter. Kids love going to play for him and all that. But then it goes down to where these allegations are made at North Carolina that are still working through. But boy, what a tough one because Butch Davis knew him since he was in high school.
Yeah, well, and
that's a tough one there. And it always comes back. Did you know? Should you have known? And as the head coach, they're going to hold you to that standard.
Before we go, Charles, we have not even started preseason camp for a number of teams, but on paper right now, you've seen the Big Ten, the Pac-10, you're in the mix, obviously, being a former Tennessee guy with what's going on in the SEC. Give me your two teams to tango for the national title. Who's your preseason take? Is it going to be Bama, Oklahoma?
Those are two as good. Those two are as good as
they're
any.
Easy picks because
they're easy
loaded.
Picks. But what we've seen, Chris, over the last 5-6 years is that's just not etched in stone anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the last one to go wire to wire? I mean, it doesn't happen very often.
Auburn
anyway.
and Bama are the only two teams, and then somebody else in the SEC stepped up. But, yeah, you're
but
right.
what I mean by wire to wire is preseason number one all the way to championship.
Right. I'm talking.
That doesn't happen very often. Yeah,
Rarely.
you talk about undefeated.
SC.
But it doesn't happen very often. We're going to see that. Right now, the easy selection is whoever comes out of the SEC because that's how it's been the last 5 years for sure. Yeah, Oklahoma's a contender, but they're going to get run at in the Big 12. I mean, Texas A&M's going to take their shot. Oklahoma State's going to take their shot. Don't be surprised if Missouri, even though they're trying to settle on a quarterback, they get them early they get them in September, into September. Who knows?
Sure.
What's going to come out of there. Out of the Pac-12, can Oregon be that team? But, they've got to go to Stanford this year.
And they got a
That's
lot of
not
issues
easy.
going on.
A lot of
around.
issues swirling around out there. USC, well, guess what? They can't compete for it because they're ineligible. So there's a lot of different places we can go. Kind of a sleeper team is Virginia Tech. This is the year they're not
Virginia
picked.
Tech.
They're not picked this year, which is going to be interesting. They'll be better on defense. New quarterback who won't be a water bug type like Tyrod Taylor, a big 6'5" kid who can sling it.
All right.
Can't wait to see how they turn around and play because they're not even picked to win the ACC. Florida State is.
Good reason.
So if I understand the reasons,
yeah.
But Virginia Tech's loving this.
Good stuff. Absolutely. VTech under the radar. Charles Davis, college football analyst with the Big Ten, NFL Network. Charles, great to run you down again, my man.
Always a pleasure,
Thanks so
Chris.
much. We'll do it
glad
again.
we met in person. Look forward to doing it more in the future.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Back in, Huskers.